also like to Thank you, Shayna. I would also like to acknowledge today that I'm on Treaty 4, and that Saskatchewan is covered by Treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, and the lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Dene, Lakota, Nakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. All people in Saskatchewan are beneficiaries of these treaties. We respect and honor the treaties that were made in all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and are committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. I invite you here to listen today with open ears and hearts, with an intention of learning and to continue to improve our work and relationships with each other through the beauty and nourishment of food and school food programs in our communities as we work to strengthen them, share knowledge, and work towards best practices. As per a bit of background of the series, in 2023, the 27 locally elected boards of education in Saskatchewan adopted a resolution to advocate with the Canadian School Boards Association for the development of a healthy, universal, cost-shared school food program funded by the federal and provincial governments in consultation with school boards. The Saskatchewan government has now signed on to the National School Food Program and will receive $15.8 million of federal funding over the next 3 years for school food programs. This is a great success, and we all look forward to hearing about how the details on how this money will be ultimately distributed. The School Food Program Speaker Series is really about bringing partners together in the province to learn together and make connections related to school food programming. The timing is exceptional given this increased funding and as we step into a national school food program in Canada. And the speaker series supports information related to school food governance, research, and best practice, with a focus on featuring local Saskatchewan projects and speakers so people can begin to see the amazing work going on in this province related to school food programs. The session today will focus on supporting scalability and connecting school food programs between schools and across divisions. We have 3 mini speaker sessions planned today with 4 wonderful speakers that I'll introduce to you, and each will have about 20 minutes to present their content. And we'll save questions to the end, but if you have things to note or questions throughout, you can enter them into the chat. Now, to introduce our wonderful speakers, I'm going to start with Jordan Sockmanoglu. She is a certified nutrition manager with nearly 20 years of experience in commercial food service and a past instructor in the food and nutrition management program at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. Currently, she's the manager of school food programs with Saskatoon Public Schools, and Jordan's presentation will showcase the creation and scaling of a universal lunch program in Saskatoon Public Schools. We next have Dr. Rachel Engler-Stringer, who is a professor in the Department of Community Health and Epidemiology in the College of Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan, and a researcher with the Saskatchewan Population Health and Evaluation Research Unit. She is one of Canada's leading school food researchers, and also, as I noted, my PhD thesis supervisor, and does a wonderful job. Her presentation will discuss promising practices in school food program evaluation to support program growth. And then lastly, I will introduce Maxine Meadows and Madeline Morish. Maxine is a community dietitian and operations manager with the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba. Maxine has over 2 decades of experience with school food in Manitoba. And Madeline is also a community dietitian with the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba, recently joining the organization with the increased provincial funding for school food programming. Their presentation will discuss the role of Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba in supporting school food development across the province of Manitoba. So welcome to all speakers, and thank you all very much for coming and spending some time with us this afternoon. So the series will kick off with a presentation from Jordan. So I will have you bring up your slides.
Thumbs up, are we good?
Looks great.
Looks great, you can hear me. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna start my timer too, because I don't wanna go over. because I could easily take the whole session, but I will not. Okay, so thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. As Kaylee said, my name's Jordan. I work with Saskatoon Public Schools. I am a certified nutrition manager. And I've been asked to kind of share what we've been working on for the last almost year. I'm gonna kind of shamelessly plug my program, but I also want to do it in a way that hopefully gives you some tidbits or ideas that you can use in your division or your program. So I'll kind of walk you through the chronological order in which we've operated. So for background, Saskatoon Public Division has 13 schools with school food programs, from breakfast, snacks, lunch, a combination. So we focus in the community schools, which are elementary schools, for the grant that I oversee, and that's the Public Health Agency of Canada grant. So we were awarded in late 2023 with the mandate to develop a universal model. And universal lunch meaning everyone eats, no questions asked. So we officially launched in fall. I was hired in August, and that's kind of when we got on board with 2 schools. So I'm excited to kind of share what we've learned so far. The first thing that I wanted to do was bring our schools together. So typically and traditionally in the division, every school kind of operates as its own independent food service. And so what we wanted to do with the universal program is link these schools together to be kind of following similar operations so that we could minimize inefficiencies and also maybe maximize things like buying power, etc. So the first thing I really wanted to do was unite the team and bring them together for a vision. And so I asked them, what is it that we want to do? What is it that we see? And why do we do it? And this is what they came up with. And so this was very helpful for me to have something to work towards. When we make decisions, when we ask questions, we're doing it because we know we want to build a model that will work across the province. So that drives our decision making, and really helps us in times where it gets a little bit hairy. So from there, we kind of set the vision for the department, but then we also wanted to translate that into operational goals. What does that mean for our cooks? And so these were the 3 areas that we wanted to focus on this year. So sustainability, both environmentally, but also just operationally, menu development, and of course, budget. It always comes down to budget. So we set these together as a group as well. And then cooks were asked to set goals based on how they could help achieve these goals. And FYI, we've achieved all of them already this year. So they've done a lot of work this year, come really far. And I highly recommend setting goals like this because it's so easy to get pulled in, 80 different directions in school food. There's so much work to do. And it's very easy to get sidetracked. So this really helped me stay focused and make decisions on what we needed to focus our time on this year. So beyond that kind of sets the stage. And then the next thing that we want to focus on was our menu. So I used to teach an entire class on menu development, so I'm going to try to summarize it in just a couple slides. Your menu is what drives operations. And so we know that we had limited equipment, we had limited hours, we maybe didn't have, we had different ranges of skill level, and we had different ordering systems in place. So we had to try to develop a menu that would work given all those factors in different schools. And then we also decided to go on a cycle menu. So a cycle menu is just that, it's a menu that repeats, and we opted for a 3-week because we felt 4-week was, too long. That's a lot of recipes to perfect. And then anything shorter might get a little bit repetitive for our students and our staff. So we settled with a 3-week cycle menu. The cycle menu is a good thing for us for a number of reasons. So first of all, we know students need to have exposure to foods multiple times before they'll accept them. So the cycle menu allows us to do that. It also allows us to tweak our recipes. We follow a standardized recipe program for the most part. And as we go through it, we're able to kind of perfect it and figure out what our yields and what our product looks like from repetitive use. And then finally, it actually helps us with leftovers. So when we have a surplus on a day, when attendance is down, we can safely, freeze those leftovers, store them, and then safely reheat them again when the next cycle menu comes around. So that was kind of our justification for that. This is our menu. So you can see we have quite a few, maybe different dishes, things that you might not think to serve to kids. So for example, jollof rice is a Nigerian dish. So we, initially maybe got a little bit of pushback on these things, but we've been at 2 schools since September. And our students love these dishes now. The curry soup sells out regularly. The chicken adobo is also another one that sells out. So we really wanted our menu to be reflective of our student population, but also our cooks. We have a very diverse team of cooks. We also have Indigenous ingredients on the menu as well. Our previous iteration had Three Sisters chili, but for this one, we've incorporated things like bannock. We do a Saskatoon berry sauce with our pancakes. Potato and corn is an ingredient that's repeated often. So we really want our menu to reflect the diversity of the program. You'll also notice in week 3, we have what's called a flex day. And so this is there for a number of reasons. We probably, like most schools, get a lot of donations. And so we need to have a little bit of flexibility in our menu. Leftovers are another thing that we deal with commonly. So that's the day to use those up. And if none of those are present, then it's a day that the cooks can create with what they have on hand. So it gives us a bit of flexibility there. In terms of how we've designed the menu to accommodate operations, we've included, for example, a pizza day on Fridays. And this was actually one of our cooks' ideas. So we have a recipe for the pizza. There's, a recipe for the crust, the sauce, and we know what cheese we do. That's standard. But then Fridays are a day where cooks can play with the toppings and add to the pizzas what they want, or whatever is, needs to be used up in the fridge. So we specifically plan for some items that can be manipulated in order to just meet what we have in inventory at the time. So you may have noticed also on our menu that we don't have a really heavy meat offering. We offer plant-based protein at least twice a week. And then anytime, particularly with beef, if we're serving beef, we cut it in half with, lentils or mushrooms or beans or a combination of all of them. There's a number of reasons for this. So one of the reasons, this is just pulled from the Food Climate Research Network with the World Health Organization. But we know that diets that are good for our environment are also good for our bodies. And so we wanted to reduce our, carbon footprint, our land use, our water use. Obviously, it's difficult to get locally, seasonally field-grown vegetables here in Saskatoon. So that one's a bit of a struggle, but we know we can minimize our impact by reducing our meat on our menu, moderating our dairy, and increasing plant protein. So that's been a major push for us. And it's good nutritionally, but it's also great for our budget. That's helped us quite a bit. So aside from those factors, what we think about in menu planning, it's all about balance. So having a wide variety of color in our dishes and making sure that's balanced throughout the week and throughout the day. Same with flavors. Texture, if we're serving something soft, can we offer something crunchy to go with it? Of course, nutrition goes without saying, and then budget. So if we have, a really high budget item one day, then the next day we're going to balance it by, serving something a little bit less expensive. And so this is just kind of a quick way to balance without actually going through and costing every single recipe. Like I said, we want our menu to be reflective of the population. And then the other thing is really, we needed to visualize the recipes from, the moment that we purchase it all the way till after it's served. So if we're going to put something on our menu, can we get the product or the ingredients reliably? Do we have room to store them? Do we have the ability to cook them? Do our cooks have the ability to make those items? Do we have the equipment that can accommodate them? When it's served, if there's leftovers, can we repurpose them? How can we plan to repurpose leftovers in our menu? So these are all kind of considerations that go into planning. So from there, I should mention, so the menu I showed, that's our second menu, that's our second iteration, and we have a spring menu coming out shortly. So these are kind of the steps that we follow when we create it. And once you have your menu, then you can kind of build the other systems that go around it. So it was very important that we got procurement and inventory management down, especially from a scalability standpoint. So for me, currently, I go to 3 different schools every week or bi-weekly and complete an order. And that takes time, obviously, out of the day. And before, there wasn't really any kind of set ordering system. It was kind of like, what are we making next week? I'll write down a list of what I need, and somebody will either go to the store and pick it up, or it'll come through a donation or what have you. So we really needed to get that built in. What we ended up doing was going with a food provider, Gordon Food Service, GFS, similar to like a Cisco. And so we went with them because they were able to deliver directly to our kitchen. We established a weekly and bi-weekly schedule, and then we created an auto-generated system. So for this, we used a system called Complete Purchasing. I think they're on the call today, actually. So maybe they shout out to them, and maybe they want to drop their contact info. I don't know. Complete helped Saskatoon Greater Catholic Schools with their kind of streamlining some of their purchases. And so we've used their system here as well. So we use, they're basically a buying group. They have an online platform, and we use the software to store all of our recipes. We can scale our recipes. We can get nutrition analysis built in. We can get costing built in. And then all of our recipes are stored together. We can scale them to whatever we want. We also use them as an ordering platform. So I can log into any school that I have in my account and see what they're ordering, see what they're buying. I place my orders through there, and it's all tracked through there. And then the really great part is that we've made it automatic. So it's been a lot of work up front, but basically we create a shopping list that has all of our ingredients that we could ever imagine on our menu. And we create par lists for the week. So when I go to that school, I pull up the weekly par list and I count what I have on hand, and then I hit a button and it automatically tells me what I need to order for the week. So a lot of work getting it up and running, but in terms of scalability, it's absolutely necessary, because now our cooks are going to start learning how to do that process, which means I can oversee it from a distance, but don't necessarily have to be involved with it directly. And so that's going to make a huge difference when we're bringing on other schools. And then finally, the other shameless plug for CPS, which, by the way, they did not ask me to do this, I'm doing it of my own free will, is that they negotiate contract pricing for us. So they've got certain locked in pricing on different items, and that's regardless of who you purchase it through, whether you go through Cisco or GFS, those prices are locked in. And at the end of the year, we get a rebate for using the service. So it's been really helpful. And they're really helpful when we need support and things like that too. So that's really been an essential piece of our operation and our success. So when I think of scalability, it's systems. It's putting systems in place so that if you're not there, or somebody is sick, that somebody can easily pick it up where it is or where it needs to be. And it's not, running around for information. It's having everything kind of organized. So for us, one of the highlights of using this system is we're at an average plate cost now of $1.76. Just to put that into perspective, a pilot project that was happening in the school division a few years ago, I think their target plate cost was $2 a plate. And so we know food cost has increased significantly in, a short period of time. And we've managed to not only, $2 a plate was our goal, but we actually exceeded that and we've come way under. So 25 cents a plate, and we're doing 500 meals a day. I don't know what that math is, but that equals out to a couple $100 a day across 3 schools. And then if we were to extrapolate that among the division, we're talking thousands of dollars in savings a day by implementing these systems. So it's a lot to implement, it's a lot to get it going, but it does pay back in the long run. So with that, kind of what's next for us in purchasing and procurement is diversifying our supply. So as we get bigger and we order more, we'll want to kind of take advantage of the other suppliers and different pricing. But as you can imagine, like purchasing in itself is a whole job. Large institutions and large food services have designated people for purchasing. So it's really about finding a balance of what, maybe we can save a few bucks, but if it's really hard to implement, then it's not worth the switch. So we're trying to find the balance between, saving some money up front and switching to different suppliers. So we do have someone hired that's looking into that for us. And then the other piece that I think we can do better in is waste reduction. So we try to prevent waste reduction just through operations, which I have already explained. But composting is something that we are not currently doing as a division. So working on getting something like that in maybe for next year. So another key piece, obviously, is the personnel. I thought you might maybe want to know kind of what it looks like running these school food programs. So currently I oversee 4 schools, but we are only universal at 3 of them, and the 4th school is set to come on in the fall. So this is kind of what our breakdown looks like in terms of hours across the 4 schools. And one of the things that I think would be a highlight is in our division, principals oversee everyone in the building. So they oversee the nutrition workers. And we quickly realized that was a barrier because, I would be the one working with them, but I actually wouldn't have any ability to give, performative feedback or participate in recruitment. And so we ended up switching over and now having these 4 schools, the nutrition workers report directly to me. And we found that it works a lot better. The principals are very happy to have that support and kind of have that off their desk. And the workers are happy to have someone to go to, honestly. At least that's what they tell me. That's what they tell me to my face. I don't know. I think it's for the better. So that's kind of simplified things a little bit. It's made my job a little bit more busy, but I think ultimately it's for the better. And then we've also really focused on building our casual list. I'm sure when someone calls in sick and then the principal's in the kitchen cooking or an EA is in the kitchen cooking, it pulls from, ultimately the students feel those consequences. And so it's very important for us to build a solid list of casuals that we could call on. So that's been quite an intense effort this year. Another thing that's new for us with the program is training. So nutrition workers did not have access to PD day, like pay on PD days before. They never really had any formal training done within the division. And so we started that. Bringing on the standardized recipe program really required a lot of support and work on, weighing and measuring things. Why do we follow? How do we use a scale? Those kinds of things. We also do our menu together. It's a collaborative effort. And the photo you see here is actually one of our meetings where we brought our foods that we were testing and we tried them. And then we talk about them together. What do we like about it? How can we improve it? How can we make it more nutritious? So this is, I think it's fun, but it also is really important for buy-in to the program. So we do this. And then the other piece would be food safe, really, really focusing on getting everyone up to date on certification and practices. And then finally, customer service. And so when I say customer service, I really mean communication. We know that how we present ourselves, not only to our students, but to each other and other staff, will really reflect on the program. And people don't separate that from the quality of the programming. So how do we talk to students about food? How do we talk to each other about the program? How do we promote our program in a positive light? So those would be things that we focused on as well. So I'm only supposed to talk about scaling operations, but there are other things that, go hand in hand with that. So for one thing, programming and curriculum resources, I really believe that it's not just about what we put on the plate, because you can put amazing food on the plate, but especially for those little guys, there's some hesitancy, there's some fear there. And so having program that takes away kind of that stress to try things at lunch and let them explore food outside of lunchtime is really important. And we found that very helpful in getting buy-in to our program from students and from staff, honestly. So those things are really important to go along. I won't talk much more about those. And then community engagement as well, from volunteers, families, parents, and other partners. We have a number of partners that support our program in various different ways. Oops, I left a thing blank there. That's all right. You can fill that spot in with whatever challenge you see in your schools or your division. I thought I'd share this with you. I want to validate you and validate myself in that I think we all probably see these things, but I think for me, the biggest challenge is the change management. We're changing perception about food, and not just our students, but there's adults that we need to get on board as well. And the buy-in from nutrition workers has also proven to be a challenge in some schools. So I just really can't advocate enough for having someone who is designated and devoted to these workers. They need the support more than anything. And you won't, I firmly believe that you cannot succeed unless you have someone that's holding the program and the workers accountable. And that's really just, I cannot stress that enough. It's been a huge, huge piece of my job. And then with that is changing the food culture, like in schools, and the beliefs around food. And we know that takes a lot of time. It doesn't happen overnight. And then, of course, other challenges that I'm sure most of us face are, sourcing local, especially on scale that we're doing. And then, not having adequate infrastructure or equipment in our buildings. So how do we plan around that? How do we get from 500 to 1,000 when we don't have proper commercial equipment? So with that, I still have 1 minute, but I want to tell you kind of what's next for us. So still building community engagement, still reaching out, building engagement with families, getting volunteers into our kitchen, partnerships with organizations, and then expansion. So as I mentioned, we're set to launch a 4th school in the fall, and then hopefully more beyond that. But we need better infrastructure to do that. And so we are going to lease a production kitchen and get that up and running. And part of that kitchen, 2/3 of that will support school food programming. And then the other third is a cost recovery model where we will sell some of our food to other institutions, maybe other school divisions, daycares, those kinds of things. Because we really want this production kitchen to continue after grant funding. So, looking for ways that we can recuperate some of our costs there. So with that, I know we'll leave questions to the end, but I just thought I'd put my email up in case anyone has any questions or wants to discuss. As I said, our mission is to create a model that can be used across the province. And so I'm happy to share my learnings or just bounce ideas off or be a sounding board. Please feel free to email me if you'd like. And otherwise, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Jordan. That was such a comprehensive overview of what you've done and where you're going. And I'm so happy that we're recording this session because I think it'll be a valuable resource for divisions to go back to, pick up on a few of your tips, and look at some of all those very like logistical information that you shared that is so invaluable that I think could help provide a lot of conversation, dialogue, and inspiration for others. So thank you so much for your presentation. We're going to now move to Dr. Rachel Engler-Stringer to talk a little bit about expanding and scaling food programs from an evaluation perspective.
Hi, everyone. I'm hoping you can hear me and you can see my screen. Sorry, just give me a quick second to get the slideshow started. Oh, it's not starting on my end. Oh, there we go. Okay, everyone can see my slideshow? I hope so. Okay. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit. I actually wanted to start by saying that was such a great presentation, Jordan. I'm feeling a lot of gratitude for you taking on this role within Saskatoon Public Schools. I think Colleen said to me, Colleen Norris, who's the superintendent there, had said to me something about how grateful she was for all the things all the developing of the school food programs at Saskatoon Public. And when I see all this put together, I realize why she's so grateful for that. So thank you, Jordan. I think there's some really important learning from the work that you guys are doing at Saskatoon Public. So just for some context for really what I want to do is I kind of want to make the case for systematic monitoring and evaluation of school food programs. So really that's kind of what my purpose is here. So for those of you who don't know me, I've been working in the area of school food research for about 9 years now. It's now become the only area of research that I work in. It sort of over time it developed further and further, and I'm involved in a whole bunch of different projects, including the evaluation of the work that Jordan and her team at Saskatoon Public are doing. So really what I want to do in my presentation is make the case for the value and the importance of really being systematic in collecting information on school food programs as they develop. So these are just really the things that I want to cover. I actually have a very short presentation. Mostly I just wanted to talk and just give you my perspective and give you some advice if you want to get more involved in evaluating school food programs. So I wanted to start by telling a story from a meeting I was just in right before this. We were talking about, so one of the things the team that I'm leading, one of the things that we're doing is we've been developing this school food development guide. We're calling it the school food how-to guide. So it's in 5 parts. 3 parts have been published. So some of you may have seen the 15 promising cases. So promising school food programs in every province and territory. We published that a few months ago. And then a needs assessment guide, so how to assess the needs of your community in order to develop stronger school food programs. The 3rd part is a food literacy guide. The 4th part is an operations guide. So a lot of what Jordan has covered in her presentation, there's pieces of that in that operations guide that is not yet published, but is getting close. And then the final piece is a monitoring and evaluation guide. Our purpose in developing these resources is really to bring some consistency to how things are being done when it comes to school food in this country. Because school food programs have developed very much often at the school level, there's not a lot of coordination between them across the country. Now that we have a national school food program, it's become really critical that we start to be more systematic in how we gather information. So the story for the meeting was we were talking about different practices that are being sort of undertaken to do something as seemingly simple as figure out how many kids are participating in a school food program. And that sounds pretty straightforward, right? How many kids are participating in a lunch program or a snack program or a breakfast program? Well, it turns out that it's actually quite complex to gather that information, and it's being done in many different ways in different contexts. And so, because we don't have some consistency, it's going to be very difficult for us to figure out whether the National School Food Program has done what it purports to do, what it's supposed to do, meaning that we're supposed to have several 100,000. I think the number that the federal government gave was 400,000 more children participating in school food programs in the initial period of the National School Food Program. But if we're not collecting data on participation consistently, how are we going to know that? And so I'll give you an example. There is a province, I'm not going to name the province, where the way that they've been measuring participation has been sort of an average per month. But because it helps them get more funding, they've been inflating the numbers sort of artificially, because they've been picking the day when there's the most participation in a month, and that's the number they're giving to the province, or at the school division level to the province. The problem that happens then is when there's an injection of funding, is there going to be the same, or will we be able to see the increase in the number of kids participating if they were inflating their numbers before? So we're going to have problems making the case for the value of our programs if we don't start carefully collecting data on what we're doing right now before funding changes or before our practices change. And in addition to that, I think the thing that's important to me as a researcher is I don't want you to have to do this all by yourself. I think that people like me, that's in a lot of ways our job, is to help put in place tools, practices that will make it much easier for this kind of work to be done. Okay. So what I would say is, depending on where you are, I'm assuming most of you are in Saskatchewan, I really think it's important to not assume that you have to do all this by yourself. So there are some things you can do as a school division or as an individual school or as a community organization to do evaluation yourself. But I would argue that it's too much to expect you to do this. That really what you should be doing is partnering with others. So there's people like me, I'm not the only one. There are faculty at universities, there are students, there are especially graduate students, they need projects. There are, we have colleges across this province. There are people who can support monitoring and evaluation, but those relationships need to be built. So I'll give you an example from my own work. Very frequently, I have had, in fact, I was reflecting on this just recently, the very first time that I engaged with Saskatoon Public Schools, Saskatoon Public came to one of my colleagues who has been working in the area of child health for a long time, maybe about 10, 12 years ago, and asked him if he would help them to evaluate the new funding they had gotten from the charitable funding that they had received to build up some school food programs at Saskatoon Public. This was about, like I said, maybe 12 years ago, and asked him if he would help with that. So I try to make myself available to school divisions, to practitioners, to various organizations. If you have questions, if you want to do some evaluation, if you think engaging in that is important and valuable, you can come to people like me specifically, my students. Often what I do is, if you have a question, I will pitch it to my students to see if I can get one of them to do their thesis on that particular topic. So I just really wanted to sort of plug that folks at the university should be involved in supporting this kind of work. I think it's a part of our role is to help you with this. So I've got a couple of links here to some of the tools we have developed as a team. So a lot of these tools were developed in working with Saskatoon Public in the pilot that Jordan referred to that happened between 2021 and 2023. So we've got surveys of students of knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors. We've got staff surveys, so to look at changes in the school food environment. We've got interview guides. We've got focus group guides with parents. We've got surveys for parents. We've got even like costing. So some of the things that Jordan was talking about. We've got a number of resources on our websites that are you can use freely. Some of these we also developed through another project in partnership with Meadow Lake Tribal Council Education. So there are 9 schools. There's a number of resources we developed as we worked with them to help them design ideal school food programs, sort of culturally appropriate school food programs for their school communities. So we do have quite a few tools, some of which you could be implementing yourself or with some support from researchers. So just to give you some specifics, if you're looking to partner with a faculty member, is look for people who are in health and education who might be particularly interested in community engaged research. So that's the term we use in academia. I would call myself a community engaged researcher. I don't do really anything anymore that isn't in some way connected to the needs of usually of different communities. So sometimes it's government, sometimes it's community organizations, sometimes it's various different groups. One of the things I would really make a case for is not just sort of one-off, but to actually develop a bit of a longer term relationship with someone like me, because they have students regularly and they may be able to get their students involved in evaluating aspects of your work. I would say look for people who are willing to answer your questions, but look for the academic angle in them. So they're not coming up with ideas completely on their own, but they're looking to answer the questions that are actually of use and value of interest to you and to your programs. Okay, that's all I wanted to present. I did want to say before I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so I can at least see a few of you here. I did want to say that I would really like to know, and I was actually going to ask Kaylee if she would be interested in me be willing to have me send out after this, a couple of questions about what you would like to evaluate in your particular context. What would be useful to you to evaluate in your particular context, and get some responses from some of you, because I do think we're trying really hard as we develop this monitoring and evaluation guide for school food programs. We want to make it as useful as possible. And it's a bit challenging right now because we still don't know what are the details of the agreements that every province and territory has signed with the federal government. Those details have not been released yet. And so we don't actually know yet what the federal government is even asking of provinces and territories to collect as far as information goes on how they're spending their resources. So we're operating with some assumptions. And I do think that we need a bit more information, but I'd also really like more information from those of you who may be tasked with responsibility for evaluating or for monitoring how school food changes in your particular context. So, I might try to send out a brief request for what you would like to see after this meeting. I think I'm going to wrap it up there just to leave more time for questions at the end.
Thanks, Rachel. We will send out, we have a link to a survey to evaluate the session in general. So if you would like to put some feedback into that survey regarding Rachel's question around evaluation, that would be a good place to put that. That'll come to myself, and we can bring that to our school food roundtable as well. So we do at the SSBA have a school food roundtable, which has representatives from each school division here in Saskatchewan, where some of these conversations are having. Also, if you do have some thoughts about what you're needing to evaluate or perhaps currently, you can also put them into the chat throughout the next. We'll be finishing up at 3 o'clock today, so just over the next 45 minutes. So if Rachel, if our evaluation at the end works for you, I think, yeah, then we'll do that. Wonderful. So moving forward, we're going to now invite Maxine and Madeline to talk about what is going on in the province of Manitoba and what the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba's role is with school food nutrition programs in their context and province. So thank you two very much for joining us today.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I think Madeline's going to share our slides here. Thank you, Jordan and Rachel. That was great for us to hear. I mean, I think we could talk about these things all day, so it's really hard to keep it within 20 minutes. So thank you again for the invitation today. My name's Maxine, and joining me is Madeline. We're both community dietitians with the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba. And I think Madeline's going to turn off her camera for now, and I'll invite her back in a bit to share about the work she's doing with the council. So today, Maddie and I are going to spend about the next 20 minutes or so talking about the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba, our history, our priorities, and support to school meal and snack programs in every region of Manitoba. So at the end, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and we'll also share our contact information if you'd like to reach out after the presentation as well. So Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba is a charitable organization. We're dedicated to helping school children learn, grow, and succeed by supporting Manitoba school meal and snack programs. We receive funding from the province of Manitoba, as well as many foundations, corporate, and individual donors. And we work to support over 400 programs across the province, and we provide some grant funding and nutrition guidance. So we work with a dedicated group of volunteer board members from a variety of sectors, and our longstanding board chairperson, Wendy Bloomfield, is also a school trustee here in Manitoba. Our staff team includes 5 full-time dietitians, 2 casual dietitians, and 1 administrative and fundraising coordinator. Our team hasn't always been this large, though. In fact, we started with 1 3/4-time provincial coordinator and have grown over the last 2 decades. So our mission is leadership in child nutrition for Manitoba school-age children through education, funding, and promotion of guiding principles. And our vision is every child, every day, well-nourished. So in the next few slides, I'm going to give you a quick snapshot of the history of Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba. So in 2001, the Manitoba School Boards Association took a leadership role in starting discussions with interested organizations to address concerns about student equality and success at school. So the Manitoba Council on Child Nutrition was formed in response to that initial discussion. And representatives of various organizations and agencies eager to find ways to support children's success at school through focusing on their nutrition needs joined the council to pursue that goal. You can see in 2001, we supported 10 programs. 10 programs with about $13,000 of grant funding. Today, the Manitoba School Boards Association remains a strong supporter and partner of the council, providing financial services at a nominal fee. So in 2003, a provincial coordinator was in place to support school meal and snack programs through site visits, workshops, and distribution of resource materials. And a partnership was formed with Manitoba Healthy Food in Schools initiative to support schools in the development and implementation of school food policies. We also had a Stuff the Bus event, and that was created to raise some awareness and also raise some much needed funds for programs. So in 2007, the Moffat family, through the Winnipeg Foundation, really blazed the trail for our organization with a generous long-term investment. In the following year, the province showed its commitment to Manitoba students' health and education by supporting the work of Child Nutrition Council with funds designated directly for school meal and snack programs. In 2008, Child Nutrition Council Manitoba was formed and incorporated. A new logo and website was developed to further share the vision of our organization. A vegetable and fruit pilot project was developed and implemented through a bilateral funding agreement between Public Health Agency and the province of Manitoba. And this project continued for the next 7 years. In 2009, charitable status was obtained, along with a new vision statement, constitution, and bylaws. In 2013, the support from the province of Manitoba expanded, allowing our organization to hire 2 registered dietitians to lead the nutrition support for programs. Starting a strong tradition, the Stone Soup Awareness event was held at Manitoba Hydro Place in downtown Winnipeg, and a fundraising event has since grown over the years and built many community connections and support for school meal programs. With the goal of connecting with peers across Canada, CNCM was invited to become a founding member of the Canadian Children and Youth Nutrition Program Partnership. So moving to 2015, the long-term executive director retired and transitioned to a board position, and staff transitioned into a shared leadership team to support the organization and school programs in Manitoba. The CNCM board and staff continue to work to support school meal and snack programs in our province while staying true to our mission, vision, and values. The funders, supporters, and partners that we have developed along the way, including all the schools we work with, have made the journey possible. Around this time, the council also became a member of the Coalition for Healthy School Food. And I won't spend a lot of time talking about that, as I think most of you are well aware of the important work that the coalition is doing to support school food in provinces and territories from coast to coast to coast. The province of Manitoba recently announced $30 million investment in school food. For the 24-25 school year, we saw $15 million going directly to school divisions for local meal programs based on enrollment and socioeconomic factors, $6 million for public schools and communities with the highest socioeconomic need, and $9 million in grants for nutrition programming available on an application basis that includes expanding support for CNCM, some family outreach initiatives, and support for eligible after-school, summer, and school break programs. So of that, CNCM received $4.9 million. With the increased provincial investment for school meal programs and funding going to the divisions, we're moving to a new chapter of school food in Manitoba. And our hopes are that some of the challenges will be alleviated and that schools will be able to offer a greater variety of nutritious foods and not have to worry about needing to decrease the amount of days or weeks they're able to offer their program. We're also now collaborating with new divisional leads and new provincial contacts as our agreement shifted from health to education. So this fall, there was also federal investment in school food. And the Government of Canada and Manitoba reached an agreement to expand school food programs in Manitoba. Manitoba was the second province after Newfoundland and Labrador to sign an agreement with the federal government for the new National School Food Program. The agreement included initial federal investment of approximately $17.2 million over the next 3 years to ensure more kids get the nutritious food they need to thrive. So after years of advocating for the need for additional funding for school food programs, you can see a lot has happened very recently. We're thrilled with the increased investment, and we're now shifting our work to support schools with the newly announced funding. We've seen growth in program numbers as well as students accessing the programs. Schools are working hard to balance out staffing, equipment, and infrastructure needs in this first year. And what we're seeing are that many programs can now build on aspects of a comprehensive meal program. It's much more than just food on the table. It's about promoting health, increasing food literacy, contributing to a supportive school environment, involving community, and protecting the environment. Next, I'm going to just briefly talk about our priority areas of our work at Child Nutrition Council. And then I'm going to invite Maddie to talk about the work that she's mainly involved in. So as a nonprofit charity, we work with a volunteer board and support their activities. So things like member recruitment, developing organizational policies and reports, and leading our strategic planning. We work hard to ensure financial security for programs and manage an equitable granting system to allocate funds to schools that apply each year. We provide grants in 2 installments in September and February and collect reports and data from those programs. Our organization works with individual and community donors and funders that want to make an impact. We also work with organizations and commodity groups to host nutrition education workshops, webinars, and distribute coupons, all at a provincial level. We're unique because we're based in Manitoba, and all the funds we raise stay in this province, reaching children in all regions of Manitoba. Our dietitians have provided input on the Manitoba School Nutrition Guidelines and sit on the Coalition for Healthy School Food Steering Committee and the Indigenous School Food Circle. We're co-chairs of the Manitoba Fields Food Environment for Early Learning and Schools group and part of their Diet Culture Working Group. We're members of the Manitoba RD Network, as well as preceptors for the University of Manitoba Masters of Applied Human Nutrition students. At CNCM, we're always working on new partnerships, research, and opportunities to support Manitoba school meal and snack programs. As an example, we've worked with 3 master student placements over the last few years. Our final priority area that we're discussing today is nutrition support to schools and divisions, and I'll turn it over to Maddie for that.
Thanks, Maxine. So as mentioned, the Council provides a variety of nutrition supports to meal programs across the province. And before I highlight the supports that we provide, I want to share more information about the school meal programs that we work with. The meal and snack programs are school or community-led, and schools decide how to offer their program based on their unique needs and circumstances. So our team works closely with schools to ensure that we understand their needs so that we can provide the support or provide them support in offering the best programs possible. So there are a variety of different serving methods for school meal programs, and schools choose which method works best to meet the needs of their school community. The majority of school meal programs that we work with use more than one serving method to deliver food to their students, with the most common being the grab-and-go method. And this can work particularly well for older students in scenarios where there isn't much time or space to allow for a sit-down meal. Foods can be individually packaged, so for example, in a bag or wrapped in food-safe paper, or they can be served whole, so maybe a fruit or a muffin. Food can be set out and ready for pickup at various sites throughout the school, such as outside the office, the resource room, or in a study area. Many schools set up food carts in hallways for quick service and to catch students coming in or out of the school. And this can be a great way to include student volunteers who can help distribute food from the carts. The second most common serving method is having meals and snacks provided in the classroom. So this can reach a large number of students or potentially the whole school environment. It works well when classroom schedules are flexible enough to incorporate meals or snacks into the day, and when staff have the capacity to assist with serving and cleaning up in the classroom. Foods, of course, must be chosen and prepared with consideration to how long they will be available in the classroom. So for example, programs would need to plan to not have perishable items sitting out all day, or invest in a classroom cooler or mini refrigerators. And of course, student volunteers can actually deliver bins or carts prepared in advance with meals or snacks to each classroom. Of course, if space allows, many schools provide food in a designated meal or snack room. And this provides a group of students with room to sit and enjoy their meal or snack at tables. And the tables could be set up temporarily or in a dedicated room. This model can help facilitate family-style meal service and student involvement in meal preparation. And it's a great opportunity to model and build competent mealtime behavior. Having a designated room also requires no special transportation or packaging of foods. Of course, this serving method may not work if students don't have dedicated time to sit down to eat. Some schools are able to collaborate with their canteen or cafeteria to deliver their meal or snack program. Foods could be offered in a cafeteria or canteen during a designated free time or meal or snack time as self-serve or as served items. And foods can be prepared meals and snacks or grab-and-go items. And a unique system could be used where their nutrition program reimburses the cost of meals and or snacks that students pick up from the canteen or cafeteria during school hours. So what supports do we offer these school meal programs? Well, we offer one-on-one support to program coordinators by completing program visits to take a tour of the space and discuss their program. We provide receipt reviews, webinars, and workshops, and develop and share fact sheets and resources on our website. And now let's review what these supports look like in a little bit more detail. So throughout the school year, we reach out to programs to schedule meetings by phone, video call, or to set up an in-person visit to each program as often as we can. Typically, we aim to visit or phone each program at least once every couple of years. And new this year, we have been facilitating networking video calls and small group meetings with program coordinators. And this has allowed us to offer greater support to more programs. Visiting programs allows us to see the space and provides an opportunity to have some dedicated time to talk to program coordinators about the successes and challenges that their program may be facing and to offer more guidance. This is the Manitoba School Nutrition Guidelines that were developed in 2014. So although it is a bit dated, it is one tool that we use with programs when we connect with them to assist them with their menu planning. And as possible, given their individual circumstances, we encourage programs to purchase a variety of nutrient-rich foods. These guidelines are also referenced when we complete receipt reviews for programs. So at the end of each school year, we have programs submit itemized receipts for all of their food purchases. And we have a dietitian on the council who specifically reviews these receipts to complete this receipt review and nutrition feedback report that we share with the program coordinator to help them reflect on their program and assist them with future goal planning. Now, you can imagine that this process takes some time to complete. So not all programs receive a receipt review every year. And our process for completing receipt reviews may also change in the future, as over this past year with having an increase in funding, this takes even more time to complete and limits the number of programs receiving a review. And since we are talking about the receipts, I thought I would share what expenditures we approve CNCM dollars to be used for. So at least 80% of the program's annual grant is meant for food and beverage purchases. And we do allow programs to use 20% of their grant towards any supplies, equipment, or additional costs associated with running their program, with the exception of using it for wages or honorariums. We also offer continuing education opportunities. So we offer workshops and webinars to programs to provide up-to-date nutrition education and best practices to help enhance their program. Our workshops typically consist of a variety of sessions for school meal program coordinators and provide hands-on opportunities like cooking demonstrations and networking amongst schools. We find that offering workshops is also a great way to partner with local organizations, such as commodity organizations, to strengthen partnerships and share more information with programs. The webinars that we host are typically 1 hour and focus on one topic area and are offered throughout the school year. Some of the webinars that we have hosted can now be found on our website on our resource page. And we find that these continuing education opportunities are well received from the programs that we work with. And speaking of our resource library on our website, we develop and share a variety of fact sheets and resources with up-to-date evidence-based nutrition information with programs. So in our resource library, you'll find a variety of resources, including information on food safety, menu ideas, recipes, sample menu plans, program planning, as well as food procurement information. So it's a nice resource hub for meal programs that we continue to update. So I hope that you found the information that we have shared today to be informative, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity to share the work that we do, and really thank you for yes.
Well, thank you so much. So much work going on in Manitoba. That's incredible, and I'm so happy to see the investment and the growth of school food programs there, and all the work you've been enabled to do. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think that there's a lot of valuable lessons to learn that we can think about in Saskatchewan when we're looking at, from all the speakers today, but looking at, how can we coordinate our efforts around school food programs to ensure that they're cost effective, they're meeting student and community needs, as well as connecting in with community organizations and benefiting from our local agriculture here in the province. So there's a lot we can learn from looking at other provinces, including Manitoba. I would just like to now just open it generally if there are questions that people have been holding on to. I see one comment related in the chat that could be a question that Janet put forward. So maybe we'll start there as other people can pop in comments or raise their hand. But the question here from Janet was, it might be related to Jordan, but others might have comments on that too. But when it comes to the procurement aspect, so that was of Jordan's presentation. And so Jordan's working in Saskatoon, which is a urban and the largest city in Saskatchewan. But what you've learned, I guess, Jordan, in your context, can you see what could be learned or relayed in a rural context from your perspective?
Yeah, so Janet, where are you located?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I'm in Prairie Valley. I'm the chair for Prairie Valley School Division, and locally, we had a food program in one of the schools that I have in my subdivision, and it basically it flopped. Like, it was good, but it was run on a cost recovery basis. And I was very interested to find $1.76 per plate, because one of our challenges was not having enough people, resources, and time to prepare food on a cost recovery basis, and then relying on like Cisco, for example, which just became cost prohibitive. And the program ended up folding because we didn't have the financial support. And as a school division, it isn't a vulnerable community per se. So not to say that there isn't vulnerable kids, because there's everywhere. But it is one of our most vulnerable in the division. But just thinking about what procurement looks like in a context of a rural school division where you have to get the food delivered in a different way. And that's a big piece.
Yeah, so I kind of have a few thoughts in terms of like what delivery and stuff looks like rurally. I was in North Battleford for a period of time. I worked as a school coordinator there. So we had deliveries, but they were limited in terms of timing. So I couldn't speak much more than that. Like, that would be more of a question probably for William in the chat. He put his email, so that could probably be a good resource for you. But if procuring through Cisco is cost prohibitive, I would also suggest looking at what the operation is itself. Procurement isn't the only reason we got down to the $1.76 a plate. It's actually from following standardized recipes, tracking how much we sell, not overproducing, managing our inventory. So it's kind of all interconnected, and the purchasing is just one piece of the puzzle. So I would say that there might be value in looking more broadly at how your operation ran. Because it's not necessarily just where we're sourcing the food from, it's what we're doing with it in our facility as well. And what your menu offering is too. I don't know if that helps at all, sorry.
Well, that was a facility kind of answer, like in terms of, because I know that, you're in charge of several programs, but like when your programs are like an hour from the next program, you can't do things jointly. You can't say, hey, like we'll share these costs or these foods.
Yeah.
Or I
Yeah.
should, oh,
I was just going to share that's something that's very typical that we see in Manitoba. Yeah, for sure.
so I should mention, we do, I guess sometimes we'll run out of something and I'll whip over from one school to the other. But when we're talking about right now, the schools don't share, they're all ordering for themselves. And the only thing that they're sharing are actual operational plans. So where the efficiency comes in is we're only planning one menu, we're only planning one production. I'm only essentially ordering the same thing, just in different amounts at different schools. So we don't buy all together. They are buying all separately at this time.
Yeah, I think the other barrier that I would say um to our existence and is people, because when I jotted down how many staff are in charge of those 4 programs, and I think we were trying to run a half-time person to feed kids, like they got maximum 4 hours per day. Like you can't, you're then forced into pre-prepared because you don't have the time in 4 hours to do a lot. And I I will be looking to William. He connected with me individually, and I had already jotted down his email. So be taking back this information to the division and seeing what we can do.
Well, if I can help in any way, if you want to chat after, that's fine. And maybe the funding, maybe we can hire people for more than 4 hours a day. That'd be amazing, because that's also a barrier we have too. So yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Wanted to interject, say, I don't think we can expect rural areas to have as cheap school food programs as we can in big cities. So let's not try to have the exact same everywhere, but we do need to be very localized. So I guess what I would say, Janet, is it sounds like you were under-resourced, but it's not because you were necessarily not doing the right thing. I'm sure there's many ways could, but so one of the things we have coming out soon is what we call the school food program typology, basically looking at different big cities, small cities, rural areas, remote, northern, and the different kinds of school food programs that work the best according to what we understand from across the country in each of those kinds of communities. So it'll be out soon, and so you can see which ones we found from our interviews with programs across the country, which would be sort of most appropriate in your particular context.
Great, thank you.
And from a provincial perspective, like Maxine and Madeline, do you have any further comments on how you support and work with urban schools versus maybe rural or northern? And what sort of different challenges and supports are required there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many unique challenges and opportunities. So, I was just talking with a school the other day that was in a smaller community. And so they were able to do some grocery shopping with students that had a learning plan that supported that. And walk to the local grocery store, small community, and do some grocery shopping, some skill development, and purchase for their program, and walk back to the school. Now, that's not something that's going to happen in a school in Winnipeg that's 500 students, right? So I think there's different challenges and opportunities, and I think my one piece of advice would be to it's okay to start small and to build from there. Because I think that people have a preconceived idea maybe of what we should be offering or doing for students. And I'll talk to schools, sometimes about even, having a supplement table of food available at lunchtime. So lunch may still be coming in from home, but there may be some food that's provided at the school that can help supplement the lunches, and students can go and get whole fruit or yogurt or a veggie packet. And that's okay if that works within their environment and meets the need of that school. I mean, it would be lovely, and it would be my hope that every school in Canada from coast to coast to coast could have a free hot lunch every day, and build food skills, and be environmentally sustainable. But I think it's okay to start where you are and to build from there. So I just wanted to share that.
Do you have anything to add there, Madeline?
I was just gonna say, like, I think that's such a good overview that with, over like connecting with over 400 programs too, it's like we definitely see some variety too. And yeah, it's like even recognizing like what can they do? Because we might bring up like, oh, food literacy is great to get that student involvement in, and they may or may not be at a point where that's, it might be accessible on a smaller scale than, getting them involved with a lot of things. But yeah, I'd echo a lot of thoughts that Maxine had shared there too. So I can't think of anything else on the top of my head.
Those are excellent takeaways to think about, so that just really centering the needs of the school and community and where they're at. That's going to be likely the most successful step forward. Is there any other questions from participants at the moment?
I think there's one in the chat from Flavia Lucio. I can't do the rest, I'm sorry. I don't want to butcher your last name. But it says, do you have a unique contract? I believe the volume-based purchase affects pricing, even if the amounts are distributed differently in different locations. And then the suggestion of growing vegetables to help lower the cost and partnering with local. So thank you for that. We don't have any exclusive contracts to answer your question. I mentioned the contract pricing with CPS, which we're locked into, and William commented on that in the chat as well. And then in terms of growing vegetables and partnering with local farmers, you're preaching to the choir. I know it's in the works. I think at our scale, it's hard. It's a challenge for sure, but it's definitely something that we want to do. But kind of what Maxine and Madeline were saying, we are starting with what we have based on where we are. And the idea to use GFS was just so we could get up and running and get started. And now we can look at adding, more local producers in, but definitely you're right. Will be great if we could do that. So thank you.
Thank you for that discussion. I might pose a question to Rachel just regarding evaluation. And when schools are looking at, collecting data, or, they haven't really collected anything much regarding their school food programs, like maybe just some financial or costing, what would you, recommend for, like, what are some basic places to start and some basic information that they might like to have on hand that would be helpful for them to know if their program's on the right track?
Well, there's a few areas. I would say the first thing that I would very strongly encourage, if for things that sort of basic information like participation, don't just collect overall participation, but participation in each individual program. So if, for example, you have a lunch program and you have a snack program, or a breakfast and a snack, to separate those two out as much as possible in terms of collecting information on participation, which can be really hard. Like if it's a grab and go, like to go to the examples from Manitoba, how do you determine what the participation is when it's grab and go? Well, you can count what you put out, and even if it's just an estimate of what's left over at the end, that is better than that is better than nothing, but ideally count what you put out, count what you then put away at the end of the day. So, I would very strongly encourage everyone to try as much as possible to try to capture each individual food program that you have, not as a whole. And if you need help with that, I would be more than happy to help you with some ideas. And the guide we're putting out should give you a ton of very concrete ideas for how to do that. So that would be one. I think you mentioned costing. I think costing and costing of food, the food products, but costing of labor, and also how much volunteer labor. So if your program is offered on volunteer hours and there aren't dedicated staff, to keep track of how many hours those people are putting in, so that you can then, if you do get an influx of funding, you get some new funding and you can actually hire somebody, you can then determine what you have gained from having that extra, that person who's dedicated staff. So all of these things are to be able to make a case for why your program should continue, why it's making, how it's, making an impact. Then you could move beyond that. You can do things like some surveys of families, of parents, caregivers on their perceptions of programs. I think it's more difficult at the school level to have the capacity to do things like focus groups or individual interviews, but that's really where you want to partner with someone like me, someone in academia who might have a graduate student who has a project, needs to find a project, those sorts of things. But really it's about starting with the areas that you can do yourself and then finding others to support the rest of that evaluation work.
If I could add a little bit to that, and I think Jordan spoke to it, and it's in the implementation guide that Rachel had spoke to. I think it's a really good idea to think about your mission and your vision for your school food program and have those discussions with the staff that are going to be involved, with administration, if students can be involved. And, I think that's a really good first step. Like, is it for building skills with students? Like, are students going to be involved? What about recycling and composting, and what type of program? So it's great to just have those conversations, and I think the implementation guide that Rachel had mentioned earlier is really a must read if you if you're looking at this and want more information.
I don't see any hands, so I'll ask another question. And this would be to Maxine and Madeline again. But could you speak a little bit about how you work with commodity groups and producers in Manitoba? That's something that we've talked a little bit about at the SSBA, is what could a farm to fork or working with local agriculture in Saskatchewan look like with school food programs?
Yeah, and so I won't speak to what's happening. Like, there may be things happening at the divisional level, but with Child Nutrition Council Manitoba, we've had a long-standing partnership with Manitoba Egg, and so we do distribute egg coupons to programs throughout the province. So that's one piece, and commodity groups have also showed interest, and we've really this year try to reach out to share about, what do these programs in Manitoba look like? What are they doing? What are some of their challenges? And how can we work together? And so we've been pretty successful this year with having some commodity groups actually sponsor workshop sessions and resources for programs. So that's something that, I mean, we have done that in the past, but we've really tried to have more of an effort towards reaching out and sharing about these programs and how can we work together.
It's been really great to witness. It's my first year working with the council as well, but with the commodity groups, like with our recent workshops, like we've done, I guess, 2 this year as well. But it's been really great just to see some of that partnership and them being eager to kind of, support and contribute, right? And it helps with that information sharing too.
Beyond the egg producers, are there any other groups that provide actual food, like donations at like larger scales?
There might be to individual schools and divisions, but like at Child Nutrition Council, we actually don't deal hands-on with food. So we don't have trucks or a warehouse or anything like that. We're providing grant funding and nutrition support. So there may be smaller things happening, but nothing with the Child Nutrition Council provincial wide beyond the coupon program.
Thank you for that. And yeah, and I just think, I guess for, to summarize in the last couple minutes, from each of you, do you have, and I guess Rachel maybe sort of summarized her evaluation advice, but for schools who are maybe who are working quite individually right now, here in Saskatchewan and are wanting to, like, what advice would you give to schools that are wanting to increase their meal production in their own schools? And maybe this is best for Jordan. And what advice would you give for schools that want to start working together?
I'm gonna try to keep it concise. Build the system, get the buy-in, be uncomfortable or be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Those are my 3 things.
That's fabulous and very concise.
And I would have said something very similar. I think if you even go to the division level and see, there might be very different schools and different contexts at the division level, but talk to each other. There's
Yeah.
got to be some commonalities as well, and you can build those common systems, and that will support.
Yeah, we've been doing quite a bit of work this year with having networking calls with schools to get from different areas of the province to get on a call and share what they're doing. And then having small group networking sessions beyond our larger workshops. And I think it's really appreciated. It's good for people to be able to come together and work through challenges and opportunities together.
Thank you so much, and what a nice note to end on. A session is just closing, but I'm just going to share my screen one more time. We do have an evaluation, as I had mentioned, that you could also on here leave any thoughts about regarding Rachel's question about what you would like to see evaluated or things that you need to work towards monitoring. Rachel also left her email in the chat for you to follow up. We do have one more session coming in May 1st, and that will be the final session of this series. You can also provide us some feedback on what you might like to see in that session. I'm going to just leave this up for 10 more seconds for anybody that wants to scan the QR code and leave us some feedback. And then lastly, if you'd like to register for the final session, the QR code is up. The recordings, as I mentioned, are available at the SSBA website. So you can see our last session back in February was on supporting Indigenous school food programs. It was an incredible session. So if you haven't seen it, please find that recording there. And just I'd like to thank everybody for coming today and sharing this information and knowledge. This has been a very successful school food speaker series. We've been able to engage people from across academia, community organizations, health, public health, and education. And as Maxine said, it's really about starting to connect and talk and bringing conversations together. So that's what we're doing here today. So thank you for contributing to the conversations, and we hope to see you in May. And thank you to all our speakers. Take good care.
Thank you.